So what I want us to do is to start becoming more conscious, start choosing things in a better way for ourselves, and start creating a life that's going to gear us to really take advantage of the opportunities that are going to show up for us in the years to come.
This podcast is brought to you by The Integrated Human. We work up, down, inside out to plug yourself into your potential. If you want to see what we are up to and what's next, sign up to our newsletter or follow us on social media. If you like what we are doing, we really appreciate it if you can like our post on social media and YouTube and help us grow.
Welcome to the Big and Small Podcast. I'm Jason Shields and I'm big.
And I'm Marit Gabrielsen and I'm the tiny one.
Hey.
Good morning, world.
Oh, it's good to be back.
It's good to be back.
It is, right? And we have some interesting things to talk about. I have a couple of comments from some of our listeners, and we had an amazing time with Simon Chamberlain. He is a professor in psychology and a shaman. So get ready, strap in, get your coffee if you need to, keep your eyes on the road if you're driving, and remember, listen up, feel it, and it's going to be great. All right.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the comments we had on the last, one of the last podcasts, the one that was, freakers and tweakers and all that, was I had a professor from the States who asked me, well, man, there's a lot of research out on DMT. There's a lot of research out on hypnosis. There's a lot of research out on LSD. There's a lot of research out on mushrooms and use for alcoholism and depression and psychiatric problems in general. It sounded like you were a little negative to these substances, right? And I just wanted to clarify just for a moment what we feel about that at the Integrated Human, because it's important. Okay. So if you have been following us, you remember the podcast we had about escapism and escaping your issues and your problems by diverting yourself somewhere else, basically ignoring them, turning your back on them. It's kind of like, okay, there's a very dangerous tiger who's running towards me. I'm going to turn my back. I'm going to put my head in the sand and make sure that I can't see anything. And then I'm sure I'll be okay. Right?
Probably not. See that. Just that tiger goes, what happened?
What happened? He's gone.
He's gone. Yeah. You're standing there with your face in dirt. And I think, the tiger will bite you right in the ass.
Exactly. There's a little known chakra, a little known physiological fact, and a gland in your brain called the pineal gland, and it creates DMT. DMT is probably the most potent hallucinogen that exists, because it's something that your body makes, and it's something that's directly like pow right in your brain. It's not like it goes through your blood or it goes through your mouth or anything like that. It is like central in the system. Okay. And when you take LSD, for example, you have 5 times the amount of DMT production afterwards. It's massive. Okay. And when you're taking magic mushrooms and all these things, you get this. Now you're thinking, well, you're talking about taking illegal substances here. Well, I'm not talking about taking illegal substances. I'm talking about the effect of them. Okay.
Big difference.
Big difference. Now, if it's legal where you are and you are prepared for this and you want to do that, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not your mom, mother, or father, or teacher, or preacher, but I'm going to tell you one thing, and that is that if you're using it for a party favor or using it to escape your issues instead of going on a serious internal journey, then you're making a mistake, because these things are sacred. That DMT is the physiological aspect of part of your spiritual experience. A lot of people have been in these studies with magic mushrooms or LSD, and they're in a very controlled situation with music and 2 people who are helping them through this journey, and they have their eye covers on, and they go inside and they have this amazing experience. And then afterwards, many of them, like over 70% say that this is the most spiritually significant thing that I've ever had. I mean, they lose their fear of dying. Doesn't mean that they walk out in traffic without looking, but they're no longer anxious. They feel connected, and they're still functioning at a high level. And they usually ask the question, how do I get this again? How do I keep it going? How do you let the good times roll, my friends? You meditate, you do inner journeys, you use other modalities like shamanism, like hypnosis, like meditation, like exercise, and I'll explain how that works. So, if you think about who you are as a person, you have a certain frequency, right? You know, if I come in super high or super low, you notice a difference, right, Marta?
Yeah, big time.
Right? And that's the thing, that when I am super high or super low, I am actually in an altered state of consciousness. When my awareness is peaked, like Wim Hof, for example, what they do is they have you sit, you stand in a horse stance and you're throwing palm strikes back and forth, and you're doing this special breathing where you're pumping from the bottom of your lungs and from your bottom of your stomach, and you're pressing the CSF, the central spinal fluid, up the brain and stimulating the brain and focusing on your pineal gland. You're basically auto-stimulating your pineal gland so that it releases DMT. So they talk about how you feel amazing, and then after like 10 minutes, you start seeing some stuff, and after, like 15 minutes, your body's on fire and you feel fantastic, and you're feeling fantastic the rest of the day. Because these experiences don't necessarily change, because they are basically getting high on what's inside. Your body has self-regulation and ability to adapt and function even though you're producing it, right? So you're having a spiritual state, a spiritual experience, or a high experience, and you still can drive your car and have good conversations. You just feel different, right? In the same way, a super meditative state, when you're going inside and you're just releasing everything, and you're you can check this with EKGs and check your brain waves, and you see how, in my case, I can go either way. I can produce massive gamma waves, which is the state of ecstasy or spiritual experience, or highly intellectual, focused activity, or I can actually flatline my brain. And I've tested both of those and have documented both of those through meditation techniques. But you can kind of get that experience. You can open those doors through stimulating, through like the Wim Hof method, or Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's written the book, You Are the Placebo. What is the placebo effect? People are like, oh, that's the stuff that happens because you believe in it. Yeah, well, what that actually is you creating a state in your mind, body, and soul that is aligned to a certain purpose. I will get well. This will help me. When I do this thing, everything's going to open up for me. You make a decision. You walk through a threshold. Okay. And remember this idea of a threshold, because this is very important for our shamanic talk afterwards. So you walk through a threshold that you've created, that when I take this step, this will happen. If you guys are old enough and you remember the beginnings of computer programming, if, then, what? It's like your early programming. Well, the early programming is kind of like the basic part of your brain. You access your subconscious and you align your energy subconsciously, and it produces a massive effect. But it comes often through an altered state of consciousness. So Dr. Joe Dispenza uses this heavy breathing and pressure from the bottom of the stomach, and driving the energy, driving that pressure up into the brain and focusing on the pineal gland. So you're thinking, you mean they're both doing the same thing? Aren't they kind of like copywriting each other and they're stealing from each other? No. Your body is your body, and it's been that way for thousands of years. These are techniques that the Buddhists have been using. These are techniques that cavemen were using. These are techniques that Viking warriors were using, and you will notice that when people get into a certain state of consciousness, they have a certain way of breathing. Do you breathe differently when you are terrified in relationship to if you were in love? Absolutely. Right? So changing your state of consciousness. Buddha says life is suffering. And a lot of people who read this for the first time and they read the first chapter in a book about Buddhism, they're going to find out that, it's because we desire. We desire, therefore we suffer. If we stop desiring, then we don't suffer. Then we just have pain and not the desire to get away from pain, which would then be the desire for something other than what is, which is then suffering, right? But if you read a little further, you'll notice that what he also is talking about, or if you had the internal process, you'll know that separation is actually suffering. When you're totally in love with a person, are you connected and in unity, or are you separated?
Connected.
You're connected. What's the worst punishment you can give a prisoner in jail?
Isolation.
Isolation. That's exactly right. Isolation. That's kind of fucked up, right? So the whole point is, our mind, does it connect things often, or does it separate things?
I would say it depends, but
Well, that's correct. That's the right answer. But most people use it to separate themselves, to objectify things. You know, that thing, the mind is a scalpel. It cuts and breaks things into pieces. So very often it can tear things into pieces and make things very basic. And you can feel, if you get caught in your mind, you can feel very alone in the world, right? So here's the interesting thing. You could then see why that some yogis or some people who are looking for the psychedelic experience will destroy their mind in order to have a unity experience. But then you have a bunch of guys walking around who can't function. So do you see these, Marit, the people who are kind of on a sort of spiritual path that don't function?
oh, it's so many of them.
Right?
So many.
Yeah.
Quite painful to watch, in my opinion.
Mm.
Because they are, like we said, your journey shouldn't wreck your life.
Because
Yeah.
your life is your journey. Beautiful. And that's the thing, you know, you have these polarities. Oh, I either have to be in the functioning material world or I have to be spiritual. I can't be both, right? But
Well, the balance is in the middle.
Exactly. It's about holding on to both and functioning with both. That's where the energy is, right? That's where the real energy is. So when people are taking narcotics or they're breaking themselves down too much, then their brain gets fried, can get fried, and they miss this beautiful, epic opportunity to do what you just mentioned, which is so beautiful. Does the mind separate or does the mind connect? Well, it does both. You can use your mind to cut away reasons to be separate from others. Feeling alone. And sometimes you may have to go into an isolation situation in a meditation to actually find that connection inside, because you're so busy dealing with your Instagram and your Facebook. And, you know, when we spend some meditation and retreat time away for fun and for health, you know, what are you really strict with?
The phone, we took off the phones.
Yeah, exactly.
We took off internet, I say.
Yeah.
The phone was on in case, because you still, like I said, you still have to function in today's society. So if there were anything to happen, people that need to contact me can say contact me, but turn off the 3G or 4G or 5G or whatever generation we come to now.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you don't get the news on your phone like NRK, in Norway, NRK, VG and stuff. And you don't get Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat.
Yeah, and all the random stuff that we're bombarded
Just
with all the
popping
time.
up.
Exactly. That are constantly pulling us. And imagine, just think, guys, if your mobile phone was a person and they were talking at you as much as your mobile phone peeps at you, you'd kick its ass.
Just tell it to up.
Exactly. Exactly.
For American listeners, that was a beep.
Yeah. So Simon Chamberlain, what did you think?
Interesting person.
Yes.
Good. This is the way you shouldn't have pauses on a podcast. That's on radio. I don't have words to describe him.
Right.
I think that's the best, because words will not be the right words, because good is wrong.
Yeah, he's loving.
He's loving. He's
wise. Present.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He is very good at what he does.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Professor in psychology, guys, from England, lives in Norway.
Torvund.
Yes, he's in Torvund. And you just have to, in a way, experience what he's doing to really understand the depths of what he's doing. But he is a shaman. On top of, he's been studying shamanism. He doesn't even call himself a shaman. He said, he just uses shamanic techniques because, of course, he's a doctor and all that. But he creates an environment where you actually move yourself into an altered state with no chemicals, no
it's
magic
just with presence and being there, and that's the work you are gonna do those 5 days.
Exactly.
So for us, it was, well, for me, I can't speak for the rest of you, but we were a good group with close ones that just wanted to do something different.
Yes.
And that was healthy, and just to work on our spiritual self, because it's very hard in the everyday when you have work and hobbies, and like we have the clinic here, we do jiu-jitsu, we are doing the podcast here, which we love, but it takes energy, and we are having events, and we are creating the company and building that, and trying to do everything at once. So when do you have time to do your own work, other than the everyday work and do the progression work, but you don't have time to sit for 5 days and just work in that altered state.
Yeah, exactly. And he provided that opportunity.
Yeah, we were.
And Maria,
she was such a lovely lady. We got fed so well, and we got, for 5 days we could sit and nod, and just like we were sitting at the tables, just the four of us, and they're like our own group. They were not interfering with our private time, but when we were sitting around the tables or around the fireplace, we were talking and speaking and progressing all the time instead of sitting on our phones.
That's right.
And that was the biggest contrast, I believe, because when we got home, like yesterday, we were sitting at the office here, and everyone were on the phone. We were still talking, but we weren't looking at each other. Everyone was scrolling the phone. I was answering emails. Eirik was working on some other emails. You were answering people in your Instagram, and she was calling a guy.
Yeah.
And we were still talking.
Yeah.
But we were not connecting.
Exactly. Not in the same way.
No, not in the same way, because people were demanding our attention.
Exactly.
And I was, like I said, if your phone was a person, you would tell it to go somewhere.
Exactly. That's it.
So like the healthiest part of it was that, and that's the thing, you have to integrate it. So when you go have the opportunity to go on a retreat like we did for 5 days, and this was in Sogn in Norway, so it's kind of dark and sad that way. But it's so what I mean is that you don't have to go to Mauritius or Cuba or because it's everywhere you are. So the state doesn't actually matter. The place doesn't matter. The state matters. The place doesn't matter.
Exactly. And
you get the opportunity to just do some other work with the intention of health, building you, and so on, for 5 days. Then the work afterwards is what can you take from those 5 days into your everyday life to make that better.
Exactly.
What I think many of us do is that we think that to have this experience, to feel this way, and I think all of us, it looked like, and it felt like all of us were somewhere else in the most pleasant way.
Yeah.
How to integrate that in everyday life. Like we talk about, if you do meditation, but you have to do to have peace, you have to have your yoga mat and yoga room, and your Buddha statue and stuff. But when you go out of that room and go into your life, and then you have kids screaming at you, or coworkers, or your phone,
and people doing stupid stuff in the traffic on the way to work,
and then you just lose all of the state you had in that room.
Exactly.
Then you haven't integrated that in your life.
Yep.
I think that
there are a lot of meditators like that, strong meditators, but as soon as they walk out of their meditation, it's chaos.
Then you live with separate lives.
That's it.
And I think if we should do the retreats, we should come to Flom and build with people and do that, because they're kind of, that's the focus for that time. But that we have to remember to integrate pieces of that into everyday life, because then your everyday life also can have that state.
That's it. And one of the processes is spaced repetition, meaning that check in with that higher state, check in with your meditation, check in with your process, whatever, check in with your journey, revisit the things that gave you that experience instead of overuse it to get a high and then drop it, expecting that things will be like this forever. A lot of people get really cocky when they have a high experience that, I'm just like this. I never have to take care of this at all, and I'll never fall again. And,
try that one. That did not work.
It's hard, right?
That tiger that you just bend over for, that comes and bites you right in the ass.
It does, and the point is that to understand that that's part of your spectrum and part of your perspective, and that you need to revisit it and understand and feel your full perspective to have it. What you don't use goes away. What you don't check in with, you lose contact with, and having meditation to do that, of course, but also finding ways to express that in your everyday life. And that's where we come to the whole idea of meaning magic. There's that thing that I was talking about in one of our first podcasts, and that is that, the Buddhists talk about, the many become two, and two become one, and one becomes the unspeakable, the indescribable, basically. And that is the process of finding enlightenment. You find your way through this beautiful world of material things and busyness and duality, and then you find that polarity, and then you find the ground luminosity, which is basically the energy of unconditional love, and what the Hindus call Shakti, and what physicists would call the quantum field, superstrings, quantum field and such, when everything is just a field of total energy and possibility. And then that point before that's created, that is that 0 point. So in that, feeling your way back to this and thinking about this whole idea of emptiness or fullness, that state of unconditional love is a state of fullness. Everything's present. And that state of emptiness is that state of all potential but no differentiation. And some of you are thinking, I'm driving my truck and I'm listening to this. What are you talking about, Jason? But the point is that when you're looking at your life, you may or may not understand that you are assigning meaning and value to things. You decide what it means for you to drive your truck or be with your kids or answer your phone. You decide what it means to you to have a certain car or a certain piece of clothing or a certain meal or a certain time with your loved one or whatever. Some people are together with people and they assign horrible meanings to them. Some people are achieving like crazy in their life and they assign the meaning that it's never good enough. So if you have an expanded view of what things mean in your life, will you live in a different way? And this is where it becomes really powerful, guys. Because if I feel that nature is out to get me, will I treat nature in a completely different way than if I feel I'm part of nature and it's the great mother or the great spirit?
Big time.
Of course. And you're like, ooga booga, ooga booga, ooga booga, right? You're like, oh, that's, oh, now you've been on a shaman course, Jason. Now you're talking smack about spirit. You know who I am if you know me. I live in that spirit to start with, but there's a whole point here. When you understand that you have the power to assign meaning to the things in your life, then you have true personal power. You can make anything be the most important thing in your life, or you can make anything not so important. You're an alcoholic. Do you think an alcoholic makes alcohol very important in their life?
Very.
The meaning of the alcohol is extremely high. It's not just a physical addiction. It's a psychological addiction. It's the emotional addiction. And if you're able to open yourself up to an altered state of consciousness and align your feelings, align the meaning that you assign your emotions to something else, or to take away, like a witch doctor would take away an evil spirit, he would take away a certain thought pattern that made alcohol very important. Could that actually have a massive effect about how you treat alcohol, how you live with alcohol? Of course. You see, so, and people are like, well, that's just, that's not technological, that's old school, that's like ooga booga. Listen, guys, the placebo effect is still the strongest aspect of every medicine. And you're like, oh yeah, maybe alternative medicine, but not like real, like chemical medicine. No, we know that at least 33% effectiveness of all pharmaceutical drugs is placebo, which means that when they say it's 50% effective,
that's 33% of those 50 are placebo.
That's it. So you have to realize that no medicine is more effective than placebo on its own. You can add some to placebo. So your ability to make a change, a physiological change.
Yeah, just to make sure there, because people may go, well, okay, that just means that actually you have extreme power.
You have personal power.
Because placebo is your power. It's how, if I think this works, therefore it will.
That's it.
So what that means, that placebo is the the strongest medicine you have.
Mm-hmm.
That just means that you are extremely powerful.
Exactly. Now, you're going to think, well, I'm just going to start thinking that I'm going to be
I'm going to be rich, or I'm going to lose those 20 kilos just thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm just going to think about it. Yeah, but I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to change my environment. I don't want to change my internal state. Like, I don't want to get excited. I don't want to, put myself out. And I definitely don't want to not surf on my phone. And I don't want to, I want to be the same me.
I want to be exactly who I am, but I just want these 14 things to be better, but I don't want to actually work for it.
Exactly. That's not the way to get into an altered state of consciousness. An altered state of consciousness means take yourself out of your comfort zone, take yourself out of your normal situation where you probably have all kinds of hooks and anchors on things that keep you who you are, thinking the way you do. They strengthen your thought patterns.
I have to say there, because Siv, your wife, she had a very interesting conversation with a lovely lady the other day. And that lady, she said that, if she were in a course that was supposed to widen your horizon or teach you something or whatever, and if she didn't like it, she would just leave.
Yeah.
And then Siv said something very intelligent, and she says a lot of intelligent things.
Yeah, she's smart.
But she's a very smart one. But she, and integrated one, but she said, but how do you know the difference if it's wrong or if it's just uncomfortable?
Exactly. Does it make you uncomfortable, therefore feel wrong, therefore you eject because it's uncomfortable?
So that's why meaning if you want to take it to the tiger, you put your head in the sand because this feels uncomfortable. So exactly. Then it's wrong. So I don't want to look at it. And that guy or woman or whoever, they are stupid or unethical or something.
Yeah.
Or is it just that they are pushing something that you have ignored for a long time?
Yes. And are they providing you a safe but alternate state where you can move yourself beyond your normal patterns so that you can really supercharge with your emotions, either by high frequency emotions, getting super stoked like Wim Hof guys, they get all stoked and then they jump in ice water and all that, or you're going to go into a deep meditative state where you're completely aligned inside and you dropped everything around you and you're able to access your subconscious mind, your survival mind, the million-year mind, the mind that's been there since the beginning, so that you can align yourself and then apply a new thought pattern, a new system, a new meaning.
And how much have you grown then?
It's insane.
You know? And I look at it like, I don't know what's it called. Well, in Norwegian, it's called voksesmerter. So directly translated will be growing pains.
Yeah, we say
I remember I had them as a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, a teenager. And I was laying in bed and my calves were aching so badly and I couldn't sleep because you were growing.
Yeah, okay. Is it okay for a joke?
Yeah.
You're tiny. You didn't grow that much. Like, come on now.
I did.
Yeah.
My calves did.
Okay.
They were very painful.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
My mom had to rub them. Thank you very much.
You
she didn't have to. She did it.
Yeah, she loves you.
My mom is a very good mom, so she took care of her.
Yes.
Her slightly tiny, growing, spoiled kid. Thank you, Mama.
Moms are awesome.
Yeah, but that's the thing. That it was quite painful. You had a couple of painful nights, but you know it was growing pains. So then, kind of okay, you accept it. Yeah. But it's kind of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessarily pleasant to grow because you have to break something.
Exactly.
It's kind of if you see a flower. And now we have a couple of our listeners are very good with gardening.
Yeah, that's true.
I know because I've seen pictures. They when you see a flower or something growing, they have to first you have the seed, and then the seed turns into like it gets covered by leaf. But you see it's so beautiful when the flower or vegetable or something starts to peer through or go through. But at the same time, if that's you. Yeah,
exactly.
So you can decide if you want to stay in the capsule or if you want to turn into a beautiful flower.
That's it. And you have to realize sometimes being planted and growing smells like fertilizer. Yeah, right? Sometimes.
Especially if you're in Steve's garden.
Yeah, there, yes. And that's the point. Sometimes you have to walk through a little discomfort or things that you don't normally address in order to take that next step. And you're like, yeah, everybody says that, take a step. I do that in my life, but it's not changing. The question is, it's not changing, but are you still working within your normal pattern? That's the point. You have to break your pattern. Simon Chamberlain, amazing person to get in contact with. And other therapists that are working with shamanism, they're working with hypnosis, that are working with meditation, altered states. And you're like, yeah, but that's alternative. No, these are being practiced by doctors of psychology, by chiropractors, by medical doctors, by all kinds of people. They just have
different names and look slightly different.
Exactly.
But that's why I think you should just be open and see and not judge, because we're so good at judging and saying, oh, that's that. And I've done that for so many years. So I know we do it. But to start to be open and accept, and you can decide how much of I don't know, shamanism or meditation or whatever you want to integrate into your life, but to be open when you're there is extremely important for your own growth.
Yeah, that's it. And just give it a try, see what you think. Now, we have some scientists listening, and I know, one of my medical doctors.
Where's my numbers?
Where's my numbers? Well, the whole point is that just because it's old doesn't make it good. And just because it's new doesn't make it good. There have been lots of scientific discoveries that turn out to be horrible. And, Prozac, the side effect free antidepressive turned out to have massive side effects, just long-term ones. We're always surprised at the way things work. But when you look at things that have served cultures that have been under massive stress, then you start thinking, okay, that works in massive stress. That works for, and a lot of people are like, well, if I start meditating, if I do yoga, if I do some shaman thing, not only am I going to be a weirdo, but I'm going to lose my shit. I'm going to lose my focus on my life, and I don't want to lose my business.
But then you go back to what we're talking about, is the integration, because you should have a spiritual life, but at the same time function in the material world.
Absolutely.
Some people need to do this, but I don't think that it's necessary for to quit your job, or to sell your car, or to stop buying the suit you want or the watch you want, if that's what you want. But I'm also saying it's not necessarily necessary.
Because it's not about those things. It's about your relationship with yourself and in your world, your life. Are you fully engaged in your life? Are you loving your life? Do you feel whole? Or do you feel separate from everything and you're constantly just trying to entertain yourself to hold your anxiety in check?
And at the same time, you shouldn't go so out of society and out of the world you're actually embody or living in, that you forget your body, that you don't participate in society, that you sell everything you have to live in the forest, because the reason of it is that's more spiritual.
Yeah.
If you have to do it, that's okay. But if the reason behind it is because the people that are not doing it are less spiritual, and you are more spiritual than them because you're doing it, then you're judging everyone else.
Then you just separated yourself from everybody.
Because you are better, because your way is better.
I'm spiritual, you're not. Yeah, right?
And then I'm like, well, you're living in the forest. Why does that make you more spiritual than I am? When I can sit in my nice warm chair and appreciate nature.
Exactly. It's not more spiritual to sleep in a tent, friends. Okay?
Oh, I've done it for years.
Yeah, you've been in the military. No,
I've done it. Yeah. I've slept in tents.
Yes,
I connected.
You connected to tents.
Nothing is better than when you're sleeping at night, and you're wet after a whole day out rolling around, and then Mother Nature just decides to start snowing, and in the middle of the night, the tent falls on you. And you have a premise going, and it's fire hazard, and yay. Yep,
that's it.
Then I prefer sitting inside.
Yeah, having a bed is cool, right?
It's very cool to have a bed.
Most of my Indian brothers and sisters, they're always like, "Oh, but don't you live in tents? You kidding me? Why would I live in a tent when I have a house? It's like, why does sleep outside? It's cold, man." So,
you know where we're getting at.
Yeah, you understand. You're getting that feeling, and the Aboriginal people live in the harshest climates. Also, the Apache Indians. They have the most varied terrain, and they can survive. They were studied. They survive with the least amount of equipment. I mean, you send an Apache or an Aboriginal out in their natural terrain. Doesn't matter. You could drop them anywhere in their natural environment, and they will survive. They have the skills. They have, of course, you can get unlucky, walking in traffic. But the point is that they have the ability to negotiate their way through the harshest survival situations on the planet. We're talking deserts and mountains and harsh rivers and dangerous animals and all kinds of stuff, okay? But they also have some of the most developed religious / spiritual, I wouldn't even say religious, spiritual relationship with that.
I think spiritual is better than religious.
Yes.
Religious turns it into religion.
Yeah, exactly. But they're definitely spiritually involved. And if you're going to be a neuroscientist, you can think that the left and the right sides of their brain, their objective and subjective aspects, are being connected. They're being unified. So they experience the spirit of the land. Therefore, they respect and treat the land in a different way. And perhaps that way that they're then relating to the things around them gives them a heightened ability to negotiate it, to survive it. Of course, if you have more respect, you have more connection, then you're probably working in a different way than if you don't give a shit and everything's just out to attack you. Do you think your mind is working better when you're at unity in Unity consciousness or if you're in survival mode, right? So, that's a very important thing. And one last thing, talking about this unity, a lot of us feel like it's better to be on top of a mountain than it is to be in the middle of New York City, because it's peaceful on top of a mountain, because it's in nature and we're out away from man-made stuff. That's only because you think that man-made stuff is outside nature. You are an animal. You are part of this ecosystem, and everything that's made in New York comes from nature. There's no way for you to escape nature. Now, you understand that it's more peaceful often on top of a mountain because you have less associations, less hooks on all the things around you than if you were in New York City, where you're constantly being pulled out and demanded to take some kind of a stand on stuff, instead of integrating yourself and seeing yourself as part of that whole and relaxing yourself into that. You can walk through New York City's streets and feel connected and whole, just like you, and peaceful, just like you do on top of a mountain. And that's what we're talking about. So just because you're a human being, it's your birthright to be connected. But the process is not given to you. And your mothers and fathers and teachers and preachers give you survival tools that unfortunately often create some of that separation, right? Mm. So, remember, you matter. Unless you multiply yourself by the speed of light squared, and then your energy. But if you can't be energy, matter.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you felt we added something to your day and hopefully your life. If you want to learn more, subscribe to our newsletter and find us at integrated-human.com. That is integrated-human.com. Integrated Human on YouTube and other social media platforms. Have a great day, and thank you again for listening. Love, light, and upgrade from us at the Integrated Human team.